Today, we're talking about a cancer that most of us rarely think about, but has one of the deadliest statistics in women's health. Ovarian cancer is often called a silent killer because the symptoms look like everyday life. Bloating, bit of pain, feeling off. But by the time it's found, it's frequently at a late, dangerous stage. My name is Lucy Lin, and I'm the host of the Emerging Tech Unpacked podcast. What shocked me in this conversation is that right now, the only way to diagnose ovarian cancer is to surgically remove the ovary and send it to pathology. Yes, you heard that right. Women are going through major surgery, sometimes losing an ovary, just to find out whether a mass is cancerous or completely benign. And yet, if we catch ovarian cancer early, more than 90% of women can survive, compared to less than a third when it's picked up late. This is a life and death gap. My guest today is someone who has decided the gap is unacceptable. Associate Professor Michelle Hill is a scientist entrepreneur with a PhD in biochemistry who has spent most of her career in translational cancer research, hunting for biomarkers and turning them into real-world tools. She's now the founder and CEO of Proseek Bio, a startup developing new blood tests in women's health, starting with ovarian cancer, that aim to answer a simple yet profound question. Do I really need the surgery? In this episode, we unpack why ovarian cancer is just so hard to detect, how the current system too often dismisses women's health, and what it actually takes to design a blood test that can run on existing lab equipment but radically change women's diagnostic journeys. We also talk about Michelle's path from academia into entrepreneurship. And I would love to thank the CSIRO On Innovation Program for helping Michelle translate this incredible research into a company and for sponsoring this podcast episode. We absolutely love our sponsors. So if you care about women's health, if you ever felt symptoms that weren't taken seriously, or if you're just curious about how a blood test could help close one of the most shocking diagnostic gaps in modern medicine, this episode is for you. Let's dive into my conversation with Associate Professor Michelle Hill, founder and CEO of Proseek Bio. Welcome to Emerging Tech Unpacked podcast. My name is Lucy Lin, and today we are talking all about ovarian cancer detection and women's health with Associate Professor Michelle Hill, the founder and CEO of Proseek Bio. Welcome to Emerging Tech Unpacked, Michelle. We're so delighted to have you here.
Great to be with you today, Lucy.
Michelle, so you are a very interesting and fascinating person. And I'd love, if we met at a barbecue, I'd love for you to tell me what you do.
So I'm a scientist entrepreneur developing new blood tests in women's health. I have a PhD in biochemistry and spent most of my career in academic translational research, looking for biomarkers, mostly in cancer and also disease mechanisms in cancer.
Okay, so there's a lot of info there, and we will unpack all of that very shortly. But I think, one thing that we're going to talk about quite a bit is cancer. I don't want this to be a very heavy conversation. I want this to be informative, and I want this to be interesting as well, because as I was doing research to this topic, there are so many things I just could not believe I was reading. Let's start with something fun, because I know that cancer can be a heavy topic. Tell us a fun fact about yourself.
A fun fact is that I treat my kitchen as my second lab because I haven't actually done lab work personally for a number of years. So I often do make cakes for my team or for my family. But the thing is, I'm really focused on the outcome, so a tasty cake. So I never ice or decorate my cake. I'm really bad at doing that. But then focus on the result, a tasty cake, and we get that. So that's my fun fact.
You sound like a real scientist. You're focused on the taste only and not how it looks.
So if you want a beautiful cake, don't come to me. But if you want a tasty one, yep, I can give you one.
I think that's probably even more important, isn't it? Or, is it?
Well, in my view, yes.
I love watching all those things, on MasterChef, and they've got those beautiful cakes, but I always wonder how nice they taste. I bet you anything, they probably don't taste very nice.
Yeah.
So the people that are listening today, we are talking about ovarian cancer and also about women's health. I would like this to be also spoken about. To be honest, as a woman even, I don't know too much about ovarian cancer because, it just doesn't come up very much. So I'd love for you as an expert to tell me a little bit more about what it is. And also one thing that maybe everyone should know about ovarian cancer too.
Yeah, so ovarian cancer is called a silent killer because the symptoms are very vague. It's things that women experience regularly, bloating, slight pain. So women don't often hear more about it. It's also somewhat underdiagnosed cancer. So, however, one thing women should know is that it is the biggest women's cancer, most lethal women's cancer. So that's a major important fact. Now, one thing that's very shocking to people when I tell them is that ovarian cancer can only be diagnosed after the ovary is removed for pathology testing. So the doctors, surgeons actually operate, take out the ovary and submit it to a pathology testing to look at the tissue. And then they can determine whether the mass is ovarian cancer or a benign mass.
Wow. So you're telling me, so there's two things there. One thing is that ovarian cancer is only detected once you've taken out the ovaries. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's the current diagnostic procedure.
That's crazy. Well, why? Why do you like it? Then there's no ovaries. I'm assuming you can't put that back, right?
Correct. You cannot put it back. So the reason why it's done this way is there are now currently no accurate test that can determine whether the mass that the doctors are seeing in the pelvic area or near the ovary, whether that's ovarian cancer or a benign mass. So women in the pelvic area have a lot of masses. They come and go, so such as cysts. So often they're benign and don't require treatment. They will go away on their own. But currently there are no tests or what we call biomarkers that can be used to determine whether or not it is a cancerous mass or a benign mass. And that's why to err on the side of caution, there are many surgeries performed to remove these masses. Now, there are different types of surgeries. So if it's suspected to be ovarian cancer, they perform a much more aggressive surgery to remove the ovary and do the testing.
Jeez, wow. That's incredible. I've heard of a friend's friend, family member who had one of these surgeries before, and they didn't find anything. So they went through the whole rigmarole of needing to go through a surgery, which is, a major surgery, and then to find they don't have ovarian cancer. And it's just the whole emotional side of all this is just overwhelming, I think.
Exactly. And shockingly, in the science literature, there's some papers talking about diagnostic surgery for screening purpose. Can you imagine just for screening of ovarian cancer, just remove the ovary? That's shocking how the medical procedures can go, in terms of workflows.
Wow, that's crazy. And then I also enjoyed how you started off saying this is a silent killer. Can you tell us a little bit more about why ovarian cancer is actually a silent killer?
Yeah, so it is very lethal when diagnosed at late stage. So unfortunately, most ovarian cancers are diagnosed at stage 3 and 4. The survival rate for diagnosis at the late stage is less than 30%. However, if it's detected at early stage, such as stage 1 or 2, survival rate is actually very good. So more than 90% of women will survive 5 years after diagnosis at such early stage. And so it's called a silent killer because it's killing all this time before you actually realize it's there. So what we really need, and that's the purpose of some of the tests that we're developing in the company, is a diagnostic test that can detect before surgery. So in fact, help to identify which women should have the ovarian cancer surgery so they can get treatment earlier.
And why is it so hard to detect? I know that breast cancer now, as an example, has really come a long way with survival rates. And I did my first breast cancer screening for the first time last year. Look, it was a bit uncomfortable, but I did do it. Luckily, it came back as negative. But how is ovarian cancer so hard in comparison to something like breast cancer?
Yeah, great question. Great question. And so, in general, for cancer diagnosis, the question is differentiating between a cancerous mass and a benign mass. And so,
Can you explain what they are? Sorry, what's
sorry.
comparing?
So, cancerous mass are cancers that are malignant, so they grow out of control. So, and then they can spread all around your body. And usually, when they have spread, that's called metastasis. That is when, the diagnosis and the prognosis is very bad. Now, benign masses, they are a mass of growth, but they will not become malignant, so they don't spread. And so the treatment for that can be either you do nothing if it's not affecting you, or you can remove it surgically, but because it doesn't have the propensity to spread, it is not lethal. So that's the difference between benign and malignant. And so some cancers are slightly easier to detect. For example, on the skin or on the breast, you can feel a lump, you can see a lump, so you can then go and get some medical diagnosis. However, they still have the problem of determining whether that lump is dangerous or not, is a cancer or not. Now, for internal soft tissue cancers, like ovarian cancer, for example, it's not easy to see or realize that you have a lump there that needs investigation. And that's why it's silent and it's lethal, because it's growing inside you and you can't know what it is.
And just so everyone know, before this episode, I had to look up where the ovaries is, which, high school biology, you've got your uterus, you have your fallopian tubes, and then your ovaries are two very small parts, and it doesn't touch the uterus, and it's a size of an almond. Is that right, Michelle?
Yeah, they're very small. And so that's part of the reason why, if it's suspected to be ovarian cancer, if there's a mass on there, it's often, most of the size of that ovary. And so it's difficult to take a biopsy without disrupting it. And if it's cancer, the risk of spreading the cancer is not something surgeons will often do. So therefore, that's why they generally do remove the entire ovary if it's a suspicious mass that could be cancer. So that diagnostic step before surgery is actually very important as to what diagnostic procedure, what treatment then happens. Because, of course, removing the ovary is a treatment as well.
So is early detection enough, or is that better treatment?
Better treatment is always good. And by better, I would mean more personalized. So understanding what cancer type you have, and then more specific, more targeted treatment. But the single biggest step that can improve ovarian cancer survival is early detection. So that would probably increase or reduce death by about a third, 2/3 actually. So from 29% survival rate to 92% survival rate.
Wow. So it would increase it by that much. Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, so that's probably the biggest step. And actually, medical research have been looking at searching for early detection markers. So blood tests, blood markers for ovarian cancer for more than 2 decades. And that's one of the inspirations I got actually early in my career when I first started an academic research program. I was at a conference and where one of the pathologists presented their work on ovarian cancer blood biomarkers and how they set up a company to offer it as a test that doctors can request for their patients. So I was super inspired, and little did I know, like 20 years later, I will be still answering the same questions. So I'm actually quite shocked myself.
So it's been 20 years. So one, tell us what blood biomarkers are, but why is it 20 years later and there's still no solution in terms of, I'm assuming, getting a blood test and then understanding if you've got ovarian cancer or not. Is that right?
Yeah, very good question. And that's a question I ponder a lot as well in trying to make a difference. So firstly, back to your question about biomarkers. So biomarkers are any sort of biological signs or signals that can indicate something about a medical condition. And so just a very simple example, measuring your blood pressure is a sort of biomarker, because if something, depending on the numbers you get, it can indicate, okay, you have hypertension or you could have some medical condition. So it's just simply something you can measure. And so the kind of biomarkers that I work on are proteins, which are the functional molecules in our body. And the previous biomarkers that had inspired me to get into this, they found a panel, so several number of proteins in the blood that differentiate ovarian cancer from this benign mass that we were just talking about. And so they were able to offer it as a clinical test that can be ordered. Now, it has limited success in terms of clinical adoption. And this is something that I really looked into when I started our business, to really understand what we need to get clinical adoption so that different doctors can use it. And not only just clinical, but in terms of laboratory adoption as well, so that it can be used internationally all past the world, because I want all women to be able to access this test. And so this is the multiple areas that I've been looking at, and moving from academic research to an actual commercial product that can be accessed by everybody. That's a huge step to go. And I've learned so much in the last 2 years, but still a long way to go until we have the product and in market.
Yeah, and we're talking about your journey as an entrepreneur just a bit later. And yeah, I mean, I can see the challenges in terms of so many sides, needing to get the pathology labs, needing to get the doctors, needing to get the technology working, etc. And then also understanding the science, So I'm sure this is not easy science either, what you're trying to solve. I think another thing that I saw is when I was growing up, it seems like if a child had leukemia, you could see that the chances of survival were incredibly low. But now I've read it's like over 90%. So, which is incredible because looking at the history, it's like 10% of survival rate in the 60s, and now it's like 90%. Do you think once we get better treatment, better diagnostic, this is where ovarian cancer will also go as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, yes, science has helped in the health care so much, but still we have a very long way to go as well. We definitely know a lot more. But it just in terms of when I look at research, in academic research, we always focus on different questions, and kind of researchers look at, okay, what can we do? What are interesting problems, right? But there's a gap there between, is this a real problem that will actually be used in the clinic or by general people? And how do you actually make it into a product that can actually be used by people? So the production and manufacturing. So those are very big gaps between thinking of a concept, doing the research, which is like a huge piece, already taking years, to then moving to a product that's accessible. That's another, even bigger than the first question.
Yeah, true. There's so many things. And then you get to the point where there probably isn't as much research around women as well. And I know that this is something that we have spoken about, that historically women's health has not been easily understood because there has been such few or little research into it. And I'd love to hear from your perspective, why historically has women's health been treated like a niche or a secondary topic when honestly women are half the population?
Yeah, and women are the half of the population that really care about their health, right? So generally women are just treated as small men with maybe breasts.
Oh, really?
So there's really has been no distinguishing or, focus on women's conditions. And these, the hormonal differences between women and men also make major changes in the physiology, which are not really examined at all in research. So yeah, did you know that women were not actually required to be participated or represented in research until 1993? In fact, they were actively excluded because of variability to contribute to the result, because of the hormonal cycle.
Yeah.
To the research, it may affect the result. So women were actually, excluded. So
That's
so
crazy. Yeah, I was doing a bit of research into it, and they said that because of potential for childbearing potential, that they excluded women to participate. And I was like, what? It's just crazy, isn't it? So 1993, that's not even that long ago.
No. But it's improving a lot with advocacy and a lot of focus in more recent years.
And what do you think has been an outcome of women finally participating instead of being small men participating in clinical trials? Has there been a lot of issues, challenges as a result, that we have been excluded for so long?
Yes. So actually, a lot of medicines previously were never tested in women until it's out in the market. And so, in a sense, the women were the test subjects when they start to be given these medicines. So, adverse effects occur. The other thing is certain conditions present differently in women and men. And one key thing is, like, for example, heart attacks. The symptoms that are trained to doctors are for men. So when a woman presents with slightly different symptoms, they don't recognize it or they dismiss it as, not important. And then last point is women-only conditions such as ovarian cancer, or another big one in recent years that's gained a lot of attention is endometriosis. They present, they're not studied. So far, there are no proper diagnostic tests. And very often when women present to doctors with these symptoms, they're just dismissed as if, it's all in your head. There's actually no problem, mainly because the doctors were not trained for it. And also there are no diagnostic tools or treatment for it. So they don't know what to do. So often women are just being told, well, nothing wrong, go home.
Wow. So we had a pre-chat about this, and I think you called this medical gaslighting. Is that right? Where women are being told,
Yeah.
women are being told it's like stress and anxiety, it's your weight. So what happens if we are experiencing these symptoms? Like, do we think that there's actually something really drastically wrong, or do you think it's all just, not important?
It's so difficult nowadays. I think firstly, it's not just all in your head. It could be real, but then the challenge is there are no diagnostic tests. The doctors cannot really do something about it either. And so at the moment, it's really the Wild West, I guess, just trying to work it out for yourself. But now there are quite a lot of information for women, and it's definitely good to talk about it like what we're doing right now. So just try to find more information, try to understand, but just know that it's not just in your head. They are real.
So I'm a tennis player, and one of the best female tennis players in history is Serena Williams. And I don't know if you know about this case study, but she clearly is one of the greatest athletes in the world, and she knows her body very well. And even Serena Williams almost died from childbirth because the doctors didn't believe that there was something wrong with her. And she kept telling them, she's like, look, there's something wrong. I could feel it. And they didn't believe her. And they finally did a CAT scan. They found all these blood clots in her lungs, because she has a history of blood clots. And it's a very well-known case study, and she's vocal about it, and that's why people know about it. But if you're not Serena Williams, you're not a world-class athlete, and you don't have, millions of dollars, what about all those other women? So I think this is a real issue.
Yeah, agree. And the only thing we really can do right now is to really advocate for ourselves and just keep pushing. Even if you are dismissed, just, seek a second, third opinion. Quite often it may be helpful if you have a woman doctor who may be more understanding to investigate as well. But not always
the case. Yeah. So with ovarian cancer symptoms, can you tell us a little bit more about them? I know that there's bloating, there's fatigue, but then, can you tell us more about what we should be watching out for?
This is such a tough question because they are so vague. And I know many foundations, cancer foundations, they are promoting or just telling women about all the symptoms, which is a great thing to know. But there are things that women experience regularly. So it is quite challenging. I think it's just really note yourself and go see the doctor. But I am slightly concerned that sometimes women may blame themselves if they miss those symptoms. They are very common, like bloating. I get it frequently, some sort of pain in the back. It's not, there are no specific ovarian cancer symptoms where you can go, I definitely need to go and see a doctor about this. So that's why we really want to develop our blood test as soon as possible and have it available to women. If they want to just have a test, it's a simple blood test.
Yeah. And I can see why this is so important because, as you say, bloating and fatigue, we get that from everything else. How are we supposed to pin that down to ovarian cancer as a symptom, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
it's very hard, right? And when do you go to see the doctor? You can't be there every week because you have bloating again.
Yeah. So what about the structure of the health system? I know that is something that I was thinking about in terms of the culture as well, because then if we keep going to the doctor and go, oh my God, I'm bloating or I'm fatigued or, it could be caused by anything else that they don't know about like endo or anything else. Does this mean that I'm just being too emotional again, or I'm overreacting, or I just need to toughen up a bit more? Like, I think women are pretty tough already, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I believe the solution is to utilize all these technology we have nowadays to really develop much better diagnostic tests. And that's why in the company that I'm working at now, we are really focusing on women's health conditions that are underdiagnosed. It doesn't have actual tests or very poor tests. So we want to solve this problem by providing tools that women and doctor can use to diagnose conditions, not rely on symptoms.
Yeah, yeah.
The
No,
other thing is by the time you have symptoms that are very obvious, it's really late. And that's where you have the stage 3 and 4 diagnosis, which leads to very poor outcomes in ovarian cancer. The survival is very bad. It's very often recurs. So the cancer comes back after a few years when you think, oh, I've survived it. And that's yet another blow. Emotionally, you think, oh, I've survived all this treatment, but yeah, the recurrence rate is very high for late stage ovarian cancer. Another interesting thing, did you know that late stage ovarian cancer is often diagnosed when the women actually present with cancer spread, like for example, to their lungs? I've heard women when they have breathing difficulty, they would go to see a doctor, what's going on, and then they found out that actually, you have cancer in your lungs, but that came from your ovary. So your ovarian cancer is so late, it's been developing in your body. By the time you realize the symptoms, it's somewhere else. So that at that late stage, the treatment outcomes are very bad. There's not very much options.
oh my God, that's really bad for me. I'm asthmatic. I don't want to hear that.
You should use a different example.
I know.
I just mean like you really cannot rely on symptoms. That's why I'm really passionate about having appropriate tests that can be used. We're talking in future screening tests, but right now we're just focusing a bit more on the helping with the clinical diagnostic process.
I get it. That's really important, because like without the actual tests, then we could just kind of just go down that, I wouldn't even call it hysteria mode or something like that, right? Women being historical. It's quite interesting. Oh, sorry, yeah.
Oh no, you mentioned hysteria. Just the funny thing is, did you know hysterectomy, the word, like the medical term for removing your uterus, came from hysteria.
It came from hysteria. Wow. I did read
that.
Yeah, I did read that the word hysteria started in ancient Greece, and it actually means uterus. And the ancient Greeks and Egyptian writers described it as a wandering womb. And it's causing that supposedly moved around the body, causing physical and mental symptoms.
No,
Does that even
mental
say?
symptoms.
I know, it came from the ancient Greeks
Yes.
and Egyptians. And it, like, because I love history, and they were saying that a lot of complaints from women from, pain, fainting, anxiety is often blamed on the uterus. So it kind of reinforces the idea that women are, unstable, they're sick, and it's all because of our uterus, our reproductive organs, etc. So, it's been a long history of that. And guess who wrote all the history books, Exactly.
Here we are.
Men.
Yeah.
Which I think isn't like, it just, yeah. And hence why I'm very passionate about this topic, because I think it's been a long history in terms of, I'm going to call it misreporting, to be honest, and it's come from like, the ancient Greeks and Egyptians to even now, like, I don't think we have enough information, which is why I think it's really important that we have the right information, screens, diagnostics in place so we can understand this a lot better. Do you think, Michelle, that our healthcare system is improving? Like, I know it's very slow, especially for when it comes to women's health, and there's probably a long way to go, but can you tell us a little bit more, if you see it in your eyes, you're a biochemist, why are we improving, or are we still very behind?
Well, we're definitely improving, like the medicines, thanks to all the research that have been translated to clinical practice. I mean, people definitely live longer than, last century, but there are still a long way to go. And some of the additional improvements can be, for example, a switch in the reactive health so only treat people when they have severe symptoms or about to die, to switch from that mode of operation to more preventive health. So keep people healthy, having good quality of life so they don't actually get to the end stage. And that is kind of in a way, that's what our ovarian cancer tests are supposed to then help detect disease earlier so the treatments are not as severe, and then people maintain good quality. So that's one area, like I think we can, hopefully the health systems will change to that status. The other one is more personalized treatment, and that a little bit also goes into women's health. So instead of giving people the same medication at the same dose whenever they have certain symptoms, it's actually a bit more personalized. You actually test the people's genetics, their actual biomarkers, to then work out which type of subtypes of disease you have and what would be the most effective medicine for you. So that's the difference. And then so that also requires more research. And in women's health, for sure, so many conditions in women's health are under-researched. So of course, ovarian cancer for diagnostics. Endometriosis is another example which has so unknown previously. It's getting better, but it still takes years for a woman to get diagnosed with this very debilitating condition, which again, like to your point, many women are told you just go home and rest and you're fine.
I keep thinking because breast cancer seems to have a lot of, I wouldn't say popularity, but like there's a lot more awareness of it. And is it because there are celebrities that have got it, or celebrities' wives, and then there's been a lot more research into that? But I barely hear a lot about ovarian cancer at all. And then now I think endometriosis is more popular now because, I've heard Bindi Irwin, as an example, has it, and she's been more vocal about it. Is that the way that we need to change this environment? Is it needing more celebrities to talk about it? Is it, how else do we need to change? Is it trying to convince the clinicians, convince the policymakers, convince more government funders, general public? Like, how do we get more, just awareness about this?
All of those. I guess, and there's a lot of competing information, right, getting people's attention. So I think ovarian cancer charities do raise awareness, but maybe there's just so much information now that it's hard to kind of decipher or focus on things. The breast cancer advocacy has been perhaps the longest. It may have been the first kind of women's cancer to get more advocacy, publicity, and research and policy implementation, the breast screen thing.
And how long has that been? Do you know?
Oh, not off the top of my head. Would it be 10, 20 years?
Okay, so it's still pretty new.
Oh, yeah. But because it's the first women's health condition that kind of have the advocacy, then maybe there's been more publicity. Whereas the newer conditions, there's less known and perhaps less research funding towards it as well. And then because it does take 10, 20 years for scientific research to become implemented into clinical practice and policy. So yeah, there's quite a lag time. That's why it's really great to see much more focus now on women's health and conditions that affect women.
And, us talking about it is part of that awareness solution, right? So, in terms of needing to get more research behind it, and dollars, I think, is really important too. So, but it's hard because I know that all the charities are looking for fundraising, but there's only so much money that goes around, right? And then you go, well, out of all the ones that I need to choose, where do you put your dollars and which charity do you support, etc. So that's always hard too.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think in terms of the funding, the structural elements could be perhaps better organized across government, charity, and maybe industry. So companies who are developing products, and also investors play such a big role in getting the early stage technologies off the ground, because there's so many years and so much funds required to prove a concept, develop a product, and that's not coming from government or charities. And so when we talk about translating technology to a product, actually investors play a huge role. So that shouldn't be dismissed. And often people think, because when I was working in academia, there's always the saying that it's a dark side, the industry, which is such a misnomer because it's so essential if you are thinking about, I'm a translational researcher, I want to translate to a product, and then you are going to work in industry or with industry. It's definitely a very important piece. And not all industry is just there to make money. I guess that's why there's the thought that, oh, that's a dark side. They just want to make money. So there's actually a lot of dedication, risk, and investment put in terms of early stage proof of concept, production, making the initial products to then test in the market. And that is actually what's needed to translate your research findings to something that is going to benefit the health system.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I agree with you. I think it's important to get everybody together to be able to ensure that we have the right products out to market. And it, can't just be one solo scientist founder trying to do this. It's, it's everybody else as well that comes in this whole ecosystem. And I do think it's an ecosystem that needs to be built.
Absolutely. Yeah. Startup is a team sport.
Yeah, that's right. I'd love to talk a little bit more about how you're trying to solve this ovarian cancer detection problem with technology. Can you tell us a little bit more about your solution, Proseek Bio, and what kind of, when did you realize a new kind of ovarian cancer test was actually needed?
Right. So it is a very long story, actually. The technology has been developed in my academic lab initially. So it was about 13 years in the development phase. So the platform, actually from the start when I set up, I wanted to find cancer markers that can help cancer diagnosis because I have a family history of cancer. And I've seen my family members go through various treatments and it's not pleasant. So I had a goal when I started my academic program to use a technology called proteomics, which is the study of proteins, to find biomarkers, which we discussed before. So any signal that can indicate is this a cancer of a particular type. So at that time with my research lab, we set up a platform that specifically look at changes in the decorations of proteins that are in the blood. Now, these decorations are sugars, so they're called glycoproteins. They change the function of proteins, which is already the functional building blocks of proteins. So by looking at this much more detail in the proteins themselves, we hypothesized, so we predicted that the diagnostic test performance, it will be more accurate. And this is based on years of scientific literature before me. So I had inspiration from the literature, but the difference is when I set up the pipeline, I aimed it to be a translational pipeline that can be then applied in pathology labs, not just an academic publication exercise to find these markers. And so how is it different from the current technologies is we now look at these particular details, but still in a very simple test that can be done in the clinical lab. Not a very technically challenging test format that can only be done by specialists. And to give you an example, I know it can be kind of difficult to consider all these scientific terminology.
Yeah. So how does your actual blood test work? Like, if from a tube of blood taken and then to help doctors decide that what to do next?
So from the doctor and from the patient side, it's exactly the same. So we actually designed it to be this way. It's exactly the same as the current tests. So the doctor, give you a script. You go to a blood collection center that you would normally go to for blood test. They collect a regular sample. They send it to their lab. And then they use our test kits to measure these markers. And then we have an algorithm which they then use to derive how likely it is that you have ovarian cancer or you'll have a benign condition. So we make it very simple from the doctor and the patient side. The magic is in the kit that we developed and the markers that we are measuring. So the difference between currently there is a blood test that doctors use, and they've used this since the 1980s. It's very inaccurate it's not specific for ovarian cancer, but it's still actually in the medical guidelines because there isn't anything else better. So it is another shocking thing I have to tell you, unfortunately. So the difference is, for example, let's use the post as an example. So a letter arrives. The old test is kind of like, oh, I have a letter. I don't know what's written in it. But our test will tell you the letter tells you this is a cancer or this is not a cancer. It actually gives the second level of information. And that's why we believe with our test, we can help the doctors determine whether or not the woman requires ovarian cancer surgery in the first instance.
It sounds so easy, but it's actually really hard, right?
Exactly. So we want to make it easy for use, but on the science side, it has taken 15, 20 years to really get to there. And then right now with the company, we're ensuring the production side is reproducible, high quality. And that's another set of skills that I didn't have in academia. So we're building that up in the team.
Is it hard to do manufacturing? And I know you want to do manufacturing locally as well. Is that difficult too?
Not technically difficult. There are many steps that we must implement to make sure we have high quality products, which we want to have, right? So it's time consuming, funds heavy, but I wouldn't say it's like technically difficult. And there's a lot of talk about sovereign manufacturing as well as all these global interruptions. So I think it's definitely time that Australia has better manufacturing facilities so we can produce things here.
Is it hard and daunting to start a new business? Like you spent over 20 years in academia. What made you decide to commercialize this research?
Wow, Lucy, that is, yeah, I still am surprised myself. So I've always wanted to make products. I mean, this is ultimately what I wanted to do when I, was a young scientist just starting out. But I initially thought, yeah, do the research and that's how it happens. But no, this is actually entirely necessary step to actually translate your research to products. Why did I do it? It's actually a very interesting story. So the ovarian cancer biomarkers were funded by Ovarian Cancer Research Foundation Australia. So as I was finishing that project, I actually got the opportunity to be embedded in a startup through a MTP Connect industry fellowship. And I thought that was a wonderful opportunity to really learn what it's like to translate, because as I mentioned, this is a very important step to make products. So while I was there, I was writing up the publication from our ovarian cancer biomarker study. And at that time, I actually had decided that I would move out from academia to really pursue this developing products. And I have to tell you, I really love it, developing products. So I was like trying to work out how to do it. And it was really great being embedded in the startup because I can ask the people who have done it, how did you translate the research to products? So at that time, what actually prompted me to establish Proseek Bio was actually my collaborator, who's a UK academic clinician. So we did the ovarian cancer discovery project together. And at that time, we were writing up the paper for publication. It was now published in 2023. Then she said to me, oh, the results look really promising. And she had been working this single ovarian cancer screening biomarker for her entire career. She was almost retiring at that time. So she said to me, "That looks really promising and I want to keep working on this with you. But now you've left your academic organization. So who will I be collaborating with now?" And so at that time, because I was embedded in the startup, I thought, oh, well, maybe I should start a company so she can continue work with me. So that's how I started the company. And at the start, I really didn't know very much at all about our company and how it all works. And so all the network of startup was very helpful here in Brisbane. I also started to do MBA. It was a very practical MBA to really help me build the marketing, all the different aspects of a business. And I actually use it to build a business, to really understand and work out what I'm doing. And the other really helpful thing is accelerator programs. So we were really fortunate to get into On Accelerate, and that's really helped the company really grow to the next step.
Yeah, wow. That's really interesting how you've come almost by accident, to be a founder.
Yes and no. So things kind of really aligned at that time. And sometimes I feel like, well, should I have jumped a bit earlier? But no, because my technology platform had to be proven first. And that was done in academia. So before we worked on ovarian cancer, we finished a proof of concept project in esophageal cancer diagnostic biomarkers. And that was tested and out licensed to another company, which then really proved that, yes, that this technology works and can be translated into product.
Mm. So you said that you've now jumped to the dark side, like, you're in industry now. What would you say is your biggest challenge, like, in terms of building this business? Like, you've done your MBA, you've got all this information, you've done on. Is there any other challenges, like being in business?
A lot actually. I haven't finished my MBA because I'm too busy to finish actually. So it's still open. So aside from knowledge, the biggest challenge is actually raising the investment, the funding that's needed to progress the proof of concept and then the product development. So startups are by nature very risky. So finding investors who are aligned with your purpose is not easy.
Funding has always been an issue in terms of, startups, for sure. But you actually raised $1.5 million from 4 investor groups. So let's give you a clap there. That's amazing. What was that process like, and what was your biggest learning?
Thank you. That was super, super challenging and so much learning. Probably one of the biggest one is the preparation. So it took me a very, very long time to prepare until we could actually start talking to investors seriously. And I have to say thanks to a lot of supporters and believers and networks who help advise and just, share experiences. So otherwise it would not be possible to happen. The other thing is preparation and the time needed to prepare. In order to prepare, you need to know what you have to prepare. So you don't know what you don't know. And so I mentioned that on CSRO on Accelerate program. So that is actually one of the key turning points for me and for Proseek Bio. So at the very start of that program, we realized so many gaps existed and that we need to fix those gaps or work out so many different issues in order to proceed for the investment round. And so really that's I cannot emphasize enough, that's really fantastic programs for academic researchers who are thinking about startup or translating the idea to really at the start of working through it. And I'm not saying that's the only program you need to do, because that was just the start. It really, showed me and my team what are the gaps, what things we need to think about. But then,
And what were some of the gaps that they help you fill?
so they help identify different gaps in terms of, for example, the company structure. From academia, I already knew it's very important to have IP protection, so intellectual property protection through patents. So that's another key thing. It was super important before getting investment to ensure that it's all covered, because investors will look at that. Other gaps are in the financial projections. What are your milestones? Actually, before the financial projections, that's of course a key thing. What are the development steps? And I remember sitting in one of the on Accelerate sessions where we do so many pitches there just to really talk through the ideas and what your company's doing, And I remember sitting there talking to the team going, well, we have to do a financial projection. We have to work out in this round how much we are going to raise, what's our target. But how do we know how much we're going to raise if we don't know what we are going to do with it? What's the actual plan? So it just revealed like so many big gaps. We go, oh, we want to do this. That's the ultimate goal. But all the steps of achieving that, we didn't really have it mapped out. And that's actually all the preparation. So yeah, before doing the financial projection, you should have detailed plan on all the proof of concept, what experiments you need to do, which customers you need to engage, and which is another key thing that needs to be done. I think CSRO has another on program before Accelerate, is on Prime, that they helped with the customer discovery. So we didn't actually do that, but I actually did that myself through the MBA program and through another short accelerator that I joined just for a couple of weeks to really do that customer discovery. Because coming from academia, that's not something that I had done before. So yeah, it's kind of a systematic program, but I feel like when I went in, I had already covered some things. So there are other aspects which I then realized, oh, there's a complete hole that I need to fill before we can go forward with investment.
Yeah, amazing. Well, congrats again on actual raising, because that's such a, it's a hard thing to do, and you've done it. What would you say would be the number one advice in terms of inspiring others to also get funding for their products?
It is hard, but it's necessary. And if you find aligned investors, they can be super helpful. So I was really fortunate to be introduced to aligned investors during the whole process. So they can be really helpful to give advice on things that you can do or introduce key people skills that you may be missing. So investors are not just for the funding, they can actually give you key contacts as well. So
And
it's
I think that's probably even just as important, and key contacts, knowing where, knowing where you to go to next, where else can you get advice? Yeah,
yeah,
all of that.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Well, I'd
it's
love to
challenging, but yeah, challenging, but should be done.
get well, I'd love to get back to you. I'd love to talk about careers and future skills that we need, because I think it's really important to also understand, as a scientist and as an entrepreneur, what kind of skills do we need for the future? Because it's moving so quickly. And in your opinion, what are the 3 to 5 most important future skills do you think you need as a scientist and entrepreneur to be successful?
It's really interesting when I think about a scientist and entrepreneur. There are so many similar characteristics that help both, but there are also additional ones. So some of the things are like you should be very adaptable. There's definitely teamwork is required. So you need to be willing to be able to share, work in a team. I find myself solving problems all the time. So you got to be also very resilient to be able to keep, on to the next thing, solve this problem and that problem. So yeah. I think those are the key skills.
Yeah. And you say scientists and entrepreneurs are very similar. In what way?
Well, yeah, just so the ones that I mentioned, like you are also always solving problems. I guess, yeah, you hypothesize something, you say, okay, this is going to be a product or something that's needed, then you have to go and work out, is it or not? So actually, when I started looking at customer discovery, yeah, they call it experiments, right? You do little experiments to work out what the customers want. Is this the right solution?
There you go. And it's using language that you already know as a scientist.
Especially when I go, what experiments?
It's like, where's my lab coat? Can you share us one underrated or unexpected skill that has proven valuable in your career or studies, and tell us a quick story?
Yeah, I think that would be creativity. I've always felt like, yeah, even though sometimes people think scientists are not creative, actually, I think being creative is very helpful in terms of to really come up with an idea and then use your other skills to follow that idea. Because if you have difficulty being creative to come up with something, then yeah, I guess you cannot really be an entrepreneur.
And how have you been creative in your career so far? It's not in the kitchen. I know that you're not making your food pretty. Or is it creating in the taste?
Yeah. No, creativity doesn't mean artistic, actually. So creative, I think I've always been very creative because in academia, and that's a characteristic, I think that carries through. You think of ways that you can improve things, right? So that's the creative that I'm thinking about. So if you go, oh, well, there's no diagnostic test. Okay, how can I make a diagnostic test? What is needed to then build a new thing? So creative is just actually, yeah, making something that wasn't there before. So yeah, thinking of new solutions, better ways to do things. So it's coming up with new ideas.
Love that. Great. A skills prediction, Michelle. What single skill do you think will increase in value and why?
That's a really interesting one, right? With the current days of technology, there's so many things. So one thing that technology may not really, replace is empathy, like the way that you can connect with other humans. That would be, I think, quite valuable if you can do that.
And how have you been using empathy in your career or work so far?
Yeah. So speaking with stakeholders, we mentioned, ovarian cancer patients, for example, or and understanding clinicians, like what their restrictions are. So it's really putting yourself in other people's shoes of, what might they need. And actually, that really is actually during the process of thinking, why is there no diagnostic test for ovarian cancer? And I don't want to say blame, but where's the fault in the whole thing? Like what happened? I actually came to the conclusion that scientists should actually have translated tests much better and focus much more, because the clinicians don't have the tools to then help the women. So that's the gap. That's a big gap. If they don't have proper tools, they can't actually do their job. And that's why we have such a broken system of using surgery to diagnose.
Wow. So you're blaming the scientists for that, not the
Yeah, myself.
clinicians.
Myself, I have not done it earlier.
Well, you're solving that now. I think you're doing your part.
But scientists have really tried. I said before, this question has been on the agenda for 20 years. People are working on it. And actually, we are making use of that research. So through this 20 years of studies, there have been many biobanks where they have done clinical studies and collected blood samples with the clinical information. So we are actually using that to really fast track the development of our test. So all the research is not wasted. We are making use of it, which is
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Looking ahead, which advancements or emerging technologies excite you most about women's health and why?
Well, Lucy, I'm so passionate about beta testing because, of also personal experience as well. So I think we are really well placed with so many different technologies, not just our own, but others as well, to make a huge difference by having better diagnostic tests in women's health. And because it's so under researched, it wouldn't, I'd say, in the next 5 years, we should have so many new tests coming out for that gap.
Excellent. 5 years, you think we're going to have a lot of new tests? Do you think we would have? Yours is definitely working, and then we've got loads of others coming out too.
Ours will be coming out hopefully within 5 years, and also others. I know so many other female founders so passionate about what they're working on. New diagnostics, so many women have their own personal experience, and this is where it's really powerful when the founder see a problem, they live the problem, they really want to solve it, and not just a kind of an academic exercise or oh, it's great to solve this, but actually I do want to solve this so that women can live better lives, and it's better for the society as well. Everybody has mother to
Or a sister or a wife or family
exactly
member.
over 50% of the population. So
I agree with you. I'm really excited by the rise of Femtech and more research into women's health. Women-centric data, digital health, apps, wearables, platforms that actually is going to give us a lot more data about, our period cycles, the pain that we're experiencing, cardiovascular risk, menopause, all these things that is not going to say that women are, smaller men. We're actually a different gender and species.
and it's not in our head.
Yeah, that's right. It's not in our head. We're not going to be medically gaslit. And we have the data to back this up. And I'd be really excited, by our care pathways, clinical trials, guidelines, etc. I think I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to how, technology is going to help us enable this data and enable a lot of our research.
Yeah, and the spotlight is really helping women as well to get more information. And so, the different governments and different sectors who are putting spotlights on this are really excellent.
What is one thing that you wish every woman knew about her health today?
So this is something I'm even just also myself discovering. So hormonal changes in your life. So in our whole entire life, it fluctuates, we know, but there are certain periods in your life, such as adolescence and menopause, that, the hormone changes are massive and really affects your physiology. And I wish I was a bit better prepared when I was going through it. But now, with all the knowledge that's out there now, it's I think every woman should look into that a bit more and prepare.
Why is it that women's bodies are still like mysterious, too complicated, etc.? I feel that there's still a little bit of taboo or stigma around this. Do you think us sharing conversations like this, talking about it, will actually help?
Absolutely. I think it's a cultural thing. In previous generations, you just didn't talk about women's issues. You don't talk about periods. You don't talk about breasts. So, now it's a little bit better. So women are starting to talk about it. And so just even, speaking with my girlfriends and just talking with, like us, what are we talking about now? It really just spread the knowledge. And knowledge is power. So if we know about something, then we can look at, okay, how should I deal with this information? What can I do to prevent? And there are many prevention things in terms of, for example, bone density changes during menopause or, muscle loss during older age. These things, there are things we can do to prevent, adverse effects from that. So we should pay attention.
That leads into my final question, which is if a listener, man, women, other, wants to take incremental health actions, what's a practical step that you think they should start today? And I've been told that as I age, you will lose your muscle to go to the gym and lift some weights, which to be honest, I'm not very good at lifting weights. I don't even know how to use those weight machines. But is that something I should be thinking about?
I'd say yes, but I don't. I actually recently started exercise classes because I had shoulder issues, probably from menopause. So I think, yeah, we should really pay attention to our bodies and maybe consider, I say consider because I'm also a big culprit, consider prioritizing our health over work. And, us women, I guess we often sacrifice our health to take care of our families. But sometimes we also need to think, if we are ill, then the family doesn't benefit. So that's really prioritizing health and really listen to your body. Watch out if you think something is wrong, maybe go and get it checked out or check for more information. If you are gaslit from the first medical doctor you go and see, go and get a second or third opinions. Yeah, pay attention to yourself.
Yeah. And I've been progressively doing that. It's a thing that I think I call know your normal, which is I'm keeping note in terms of what's happening to myself, my body. I went to the doctor last week and I got on the scale for the first time and I'm the heaviest that I've ever been. And I am unhappy about that. So maybe that's a wake up call in terms of, you need to do something about this. But yeah, I mean, it's really important, I think, to know what's happening with the body, our cycles, our sleep, our moods. It all adds up, I feel. And, to know these symptoms as well, like if there's anything that's off, to go get it checked, as you say, and then to get second, third opinions because maybe they don't know what it is or, etc.
Yeah, I mean, we have to remember that, doctors also only know so much, right? They're trained, but they're trained by whatever their training entail. They don't know everything. So yeah, it's possible that the first one you seen didn't really know what condition you have. So yeah, it's good to seek second or third opinions. But yeah, I'd say, yeah, weight is not the only thing, probably. Don't berate yourself too much about that.
Can I just ask you, do you use an AI or LLM to find out what's wrong with you? Is that something that you think as a scientist we should consider doing, or is that better to go to a human being?
I think you can. I sometimes do use it, but you need to really take it with a very big grain of salt because very often it is wrong.
Okay.
So yeah, I'd search for different information and speak to people who may know more. But yeah, collect all information. And just to go back to the entrepreneurship, there's been a lot of people who gave me advice, which has been really great. But then I realized in the end, I am the one that need to collate all the information and make the decisions. So same with the health thing. So very often we think, okay, whatever doctor says is the truth. But I think now we have the ability to really search out different information for ourselves. And yeah, it's our body. We should take responsibility and decide, okay, I search out all this information. What do I want to do about it? Which sometimes is even more scary than just say, oh, the doctor said this and I do this.
Amazing. So if anyone wants to get in contact with you, Michelle, what's the best way?
Have a look at our company's website and reach out to me from there. So it's Proseek.bio.
Amazing. Well, Michelle, it has been so good to have a chat with you and have this conversation of this really important topic. I know that we started off talking about ovarian cancer and detection and women's health, which I know that you and I are both very passionate about. And I think it's really important that we are raising more awareness. We are having more conversations about this because it is important. I couldn't believe when I started researching this episode that clinical trials for women didn't start till 1993, which is not that long ago, can I just say? So, there's so much that we don't know about women's bodies. And I think we need to do more. Like we need to talk about it. We need to action and we need to, raise the awareness of this. I think it's really important. And I love that you are trying to find a a test for ovarian cancer, and I cannot believe we don't have one. So it is,
Right.
I know, it is shocking. And I'm so glad that we've got dedicated people like yourself, scientist turned entrepreneur who is doing such great things for society and trying to find a solution. So thank you so much for your work. I really hope you every success. So fantastic to hear that you've got funding, and hopefully you'll get more funding and you'll find a solution and to this incredible, this is very, very important problem. So thank you so much for coming on Emerging Tech Unpacked and having this conversation. It's been a delight to chat with you.
Thanks, Lucy. It's been wonderful talking to you.
What a conversation. Michelle has just walked us through one of the most confronting realities in women's health today. That for many women, the only way to know if ovarian mass is cancerous is to go through major surgery and potentially lose an ovary. And yet early detection can be the difference between a 90% survival rate and a late stage diagnosis that is far more dangerous. For me, a few things stood out. First, ovarian cancer is not rare. It's not something we can ignore just because the symptoms look like everyday life. Bloating, discomfort, feeling off. Second, there is nothing hysterical or dramatic about listening to your body, tracking your symptoms and asking questions until you get answers that make sense. And third, there are scientists and founders like Michelle who are quietly building the tools that could really change this story. Blood tests that work with existing lab equipment, smarter biomarkers, and diagnostics designed with women in mind. We really need to invest more capital into women's health. If this episode brought up questions or resonated with your own experience, please share the podcast, especially with the women in your life who may not have heard much about ovarian cancer. These conversations are how we can shift culture, funding, and ultimately outcomes. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with 3 of your friends and networks so they can enjoy it too. It takes a lot of research time and effort to put a podcast together, and I would very much appreciate it if you can support our podcast with a donation so I can cover my podcast production expenses and keep this show and our important mission of providing quality education, promoting gender equality, and highlighting future skills and STEM career pathways going. I'd like to extend a very special thank you to the CSIRO On Innovation Program for their invaluable support. The On Innovation Program has played a pivotal role in helping scientists and founders like Michelle to bridge the gap between academic discovery and real-world impact. Through hands-on learning, expert mentorship, and a vibrant network, the On Innovation Program empowers deep tech founders to turn innovative ideas into practical solutions that benefit society. We're grateful for their commitment to fostering Australia's next generation of science-driven entrepreneurs and for sponsoring this episode of Emerging Tech Unpacked. Please contact me directly if you'd like to be like CSIRO On Innovation Program and profile an awesome guest or topic for future podcast episodes. We're always looking for sponsorship, partnerships, and guest speaking collaborations. Visit our website to speak with me directly, emergingtechunpacked.com. We are available in audio format on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and you can also watch us on YouTube, and we have bonus video content there. Make sure to tap the notification bell so you will be informed of the latest episode releases. We are active on social media, so make sure to subscribe, like, and follow us on our social media channels, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, to stay updated with the latest news and content. To get in contact with me, you can find me on LinkedIn by searching for Lucy Lin or on my website, lucy-lin.com. We welcome all feedback and will be very grateful if you can help us grow and spread the word by forwarding this episode to a friend and giving us a 5-star review. Thank you for your attention. And here is my final thought. If you're listening and thinking, okay, so what can I do? Here is a few gentle, incremental actions. Get to know your own normal. Keep notes on symptoms, cycles, and changes instead of brushing them off. Take that list into your next appointment so your experience is harder to dismiss. And if something doesn't feel right, it's absolutely okay to seek a second opinion. Advocating for your health is not overreacting. It's an investment into your future self. My name is Lucy Lin, and thank you so much for listening to Emerging Tech Unpacked. I'll see you in the next episode soon.